Hey, this is Paul Blough. It's time for another 5 by 5, and I want to talk about what a risk assessment and a risk management, or sometimes a risk mitigation plan is, and why this is something that you need to do. Now, it is required for anybody that is under the regulations for Hipaa or the regulations for Gramm-Leach Bliley. You really don't have any choice. You've got to do these risk assessments for them. And honestly, even with other regulations, even like PCI, it's going to be required as well. So it's pretty much required for everybody for different reasons, but we find that a lot of people don't do it. Now, it sounds like a really complicated thing, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So very basic essence, what a risk assessment is you want to look at all of the things that might impact your business from an information standpoint. So think about everything that's on your computers, that's on your network, and what the impact would be if it was disrupted, or if it wasn't available, or if something happened to it. And so what we do is we rank it using two categories. First of all, in this scale, it can range from 1 to 5 or a 1 to 10, whatever makes sense to you. We usually use a 1 to 5 scale. From a 1 to 5 scale, you'd say, this is how important it is, then the second scale would be, this is how likely it is that it's going to be happening. So what's the impact, what's the importance of the data, or what's the danger of the impact, and then the second is what's the likelihood. And so we combine those two together to get a number that then allows us to rank all of the different risks that we may identify. Now, you could sit down and probably come up with 3,000 different risks very, very easily. There's no way that any small business can handle 3,000 risks at one time. And this is where the risk management plan or the risk mitigation plan comes into play, because then using that ranking system, identifying all of the things that might impact your business, and then ranking them, what we'll then do is we'll add another, if we think about it like on a spreadsheet, we'll add another column and we'll put in what we think the dollar cost would be to fix that problem, and then what the time cost is to fix that problem. Because those are two very important things to a small business. Number one is how many dollars do I have to spend? Because you don't have infinite dollars to spend on information services or on security. You have a fixed dollar amount. And that range, depending on what type of business that you are in, will range from either about, on the very, very low side, 1% of your total gross revenue, to the top side to somewhere around 8% of your gross revenue. And so that's a budget number. So, median being somewhere around 4 or 5% of your gross revenue is what you should be then spending back on IT. And you can't really afford, very, very few businesses, probably no businesses, can afford to spend any more than that. And so if the risk plan were to call for spending 20% or 100% of your gross profit, you can't do that. And so what we do is we put the dollar amount down, and then the other big factor is, in most small businesses, we wear lots of different hats, don't we? I mean, we put on one hat when we're accountant, we put one hat when we're management, another hat when we're HR, and we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of different things. And so anything that we add into the mix is something that's going to suck time away from another function, which also may be important. So what's the time requirement? So when we then look at what's the likelihood of the risk, what's the severity of the risk, what's the dollar cost to fix the problem, the risk, and then what's the time cost, then from that matrix we're able to determine what we can afford to fix. And so this is how you manage those risks. Say that I identify something as simple as that my computers are not being patched and updated, and so what's the likelihood that that's going to be impactful on my business? Extremely high. About 80% of viral infections come because somebody did not put security patches on them. So my likelihood of it being happening is high, say a 5. And what's the severity? What's the danger of it? Well, it's also extremely high, because this is how hackers get into the system. So this would be a high likelihood and a high impact. So we'd have a 10 rating if we're using two sets of 5s. And then now, what's my time commitment to fix this? It's actually very, very low. In fact, you probably don't even want to do it internally. You probably want to outsource it to somebody. And then what's my dollar amount to fix that? That's also extremely low. And so this would be something that would be easy for us to knock off that risk list. Let's make sure that every PC has up-to-date software patches and eliminate 80% of our overall risk to our business from being infected. So that's just kind of how it works. And that's just one example. And there'd be many other things that would be on that list. And so we would knock off the things that we could do quickly and cheaply. And then we would keep working down the list until we got to what we could afford to do and then isolated the things that we couldn't afford. But the main thing is to be aware. Really what we're trying to do is make you aware of where the vulnerabilities are to your business as it affects information services, and then developing a plan to mitigate those risks, to reduce them so that you're able to stay up and running, stay in business, and stay safe and not expose any information that shouldn't be exposed out in the public.